you don't know whether your family's normal or, you know, different. We did know we were different.
Speak for yourself. I knew you were abnormal early on in my life.
The book details a childhood in Chicago, Israel, and then the suburbs as one where freedom was granted, accomplishment expected, and conversation considered a form of combat, all in service of the parents' core principles.
We were fortunate to be here. We were fortunate as a family, even though my parents didn't start that way financially. But we had a responsibility to give something back.
They gave one room to our bedroom. We all slept together, but the other room was a study. And this for kids who are 6, 4, and 3, hardly the normal. And they expected us to take initiative. Here's one other important thing I would say is,
but I do want to say one thing.
Does he always say that? Did he do that as a kid?
Yeah, well, this is my one way of getting a word in edge. I was being unbelievably respectful. I actually, when he was saying something, you were talking, I actually acted like I was listening.
Okay.
That I do believe in the importance of parenting. I do it for myself, but you speak about it all the time. I think that it is the single most important job, and a lot of our social ills, challenges come from the lack of it. And if you had it, a lot of other things would go away.
But he became the doctor and took the pressure off of you guys.
Oh,
according
absolutely.
to him.
They owe me so much for this. They won't admit it.
Well, first of all, we thought it was the one career he could do something. Like Dad would say, the ball, you know, exactly. The ball is round, which means anything can happen, man. It just bounces wherever it goes. So,
the future is unpredictable.
Yeah, it's just that's how life is.
A jumping-off point for the mayor to ponder how far his family has come.
And my grandfather was alive today to see his grandson as a mayor. It's a great country. Yeah, it's a great country.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ravi Baichwal. Thanks for watching. Welcome to News Views. Later this morning, thousands are going to be attending the annual Gay Pride Parade. And while there's heightened security along the parade route because of the recent nightclub attack that happened in Florida, it really shouldn't dampen the spirit of this day all that much. And if you're going, you might want to pause and take note of the history that is on display along North Halsted Avenue. The Legacy Walk is a unique streetscape on those large pillars you see there, which line the street. There are 20 of them. It's the largest collection of bronze biographical markers in the world, all around them. The North Halsted Legacy Initiative is behind the Legacy Walk, and this is the program director, Victor Salvo. He's here this morning to talk all about it. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here with us. This is the high point for the LGBT community in the year. You get to showcase the Legacy Walk. Let's talk a little bit about how this is billed as the world's biggest such walk. It's all about essentially providing an outdoor museum and an educational experience for all the folks who are going to be visiting.
Yeah, it's really been a labor of love. We've been working on it for many years. The idea is actually over almost 3 decades old. It began in 1987. And it took us a very long time to bring it to fruition because in the meantime, you know, AIDS came along and it really became the focal point of everything that was happening in the community for a long period of time. We had a tremendous amount of political upheaval and we had to kind of work through all that, and this community needed to find its bearings and to establish itself on a variety of fronts to really make the elements be possible for something like the Legacy Walk to come into existence.
And so much time has gone by now that you have a lot of legacies to talk about. So how many markers do you have there and who do you want to talk to that's commemorated?
There's currently 35 on the street now. There's space for 40, and we figured that by 2017 we'll be at capacity. And then in 2018 we'll begin a process of plaque rotation where the oldest plaques will start to come off and be retired for an indoor facility that we plan to open. And then we will begin to always, you know, refresh the display. So for the outdoor exhibit is always the same. The people who are there now are really some amazing, iconic people that people would recognize. Leonard Bernstein is there, Rudolf Nureyev, Sally Ride, Jane Addams. The inspiration for the walk was actually Alan Turing, the father of computer science. There's also James Baldwin, Bayard Rustin, the architect of the 1963 March on Washington, Barbara Jordan, Cole Porter. Billy Strayhorn was just inducted last year, the composer who worked with Duke Ellington. There's a great many people, and the installation serves as an outdoor classroom. We work with bullied kids through Illinois Safe Schools Alliance to bring kids to the street to learn an aspect of history, to give themselves a context for people like themselves.
How does that help kids who are being bullied?
They grow up without ever hearing anything positive or historically significant about people like themselves, and we take a lot of that for granted. You know, LGBT people lack the mechanisms for what we call intergenerational memory transfer. There are no, gay grandpas, particularly, that are kind of regaling people with stories when they were kids. So they grow up in many instances completely isolated in their own families and unaware of anything that ever came before them, and this has a tremendous impact on kids growing up. And we try to bridge that gap by, first of all, taking our history and putting it out there in the public where it's easily acceptable and people can take a look at it, but more so by bringing them to the street and actually taking them through the process and going from plaque to plaque.
That is an organized effort, a tour, essentially.
Yeah, we do tours constantly for youth primarily, but we're also embarking now on adult tours, for regular tourism purposes. But
do you see a lot of aha moments?
That's all it is. That's all it is. Because most of the people that are there, that one sentence of their biography has been removed, and all we're actually doing is just putting that one sentence back in, and it gets them really thinking about how much they have not been told about people like themselves, and they come away, I think, with just a sense of place and purpose, because it's not really an installation that's about the history of the gay rights movement as much as it is about world history and our contributions to it. And that helps give them relevance, and it gives them a sense of what they can accomplish.
Exactly, and it puts it in the broader narrative, which is also more about the normalization. And that's one of the great things that you can say is a legacy out of this. I want to talk very quickly about these displays and specifically how they have grown in terms of helping you to develop your own identity down in this important neighborhood, very quickly.
I think that for me, it has been the culmination of a dream that I've had for many, many years, and not too many people get to live to see their dream realized. So I'm very blessed in that respect. For the neighborhood, it's really about, I think, putting our history in a place where it can actually be interacted with, and people, even in their passive moments, can just stop and read a little bit about it, because most people, gay and straight, have no idea that we have had these contributions to history, or as I always say, that we even have a history, let alone what it actually is.
Well, there are enough years that have passed now that there's maybe perhaps the first generation of gay grandpas. We'll talk a little bit. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. We'll carry on with this conversation. We'll be back with Newsviews after a very short break. Stay with us.
If you know of a shooter or a shot caller, you can call the FBI.
Michael J. Anderson says all law enforcement agencies have to work harder to stop the violence plaguing Chicago. 15 years after 9/11 and the focus on homeland security that it brought, the new special agent in charge says it is time for more agents to build connections on the street.
We're able to develop rapport, develop relationships. When we're talking to someone for the first time, it's not in a crisis.
Chicago's violence, Anderson says, stems from decentralized gangs. There is no structure now to their leadership.
The same challenge that we have with neighborhood-based gangs is the same challenge we have with ISIS. ISIS has an organizational element, but it's overseas. What we're dealing with here in the United States is very similar, unaffiliated violence, inspired by, not coordinated, not funded by any sort of leadership.
Traditionally, the federal force has been adept at breaking down criminal enterprises by getting back onto the street and integrating more formally with what the CPD has to deal with on a daily basis. Anderson thinks that the FBI can change the street dynamic.
They don't want to have too much structure because they don't want to be on the radar of FBI, ATF, or CPD.
As summer gives way to fall, Anderson says guns, control over market share of opioids such as fentanyl, and surprisingly, dealing with how social media can inflame gang tensions all need to be better understood by his force. And by building relationships, he thinks he can build a better FBI.
Well, we're looking for people to work for the FBI, and we have a huge diversity challenge in this organization.
Good morning and welcome to Newsviews. I'm Ravi Baichwal. U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder has called the increase in heroin-related deaths an urgent and growing public health crisis. The number increased by 45% between 2006 and 2010, and that increase was also seen right here in the Chicago area. But Will County officials say they saw a decrease last year, the first since the coroner there began tracking heroin overdose deaths in 1999. The total is 35, however, down from 53 in 2012, and some are crediting an initiative called HELPS, which is Heroin Education Leads to Preventative Solutions. Joining us now to talk more about it and the heroin problem are Will County Executive Larry Walsh and John Roberts, who is a father that lost his son to a heroin overdose. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you very much for coming in and talking about this incredibly important, pernicious story that is happening all over the place. Let's start with you, John. You lost your son to this terrible scourge. What happened?
Yeah, Billy was my youngest of 4 children at the age of, well, actually starting into high school, like a lot of kids. He was introduced and experimented with drugs, but I never expected that he would become involved with hard drugs. But at the age of 19, somebody actually introduced him to heroin. And this they call it the new heroin, Ravi. It's 5 times more powerful than it was 30 years ago. It's 20% pure. So the kids are now finding it's a rather intense, seductive high. If kids are experimenting with drugs and they come across this, they may want to try it. The problem is it's also very lethal. My son tried it, and he found that you could smoke it or snort it. You no longer have to inject this drug, and that's really important. That's why it's spreading now. You know, Eric Holder called it spreading. It's an epidemic. It's spreading so quickly now. But Billy tried this drug, and it's a powerful drug. It's a central nervous system depressant, and he was alone. And in effect, he went off to sleep, and gradually his heart stopped beating, and he suffocated to death.
I can still see how much it pains you just to talk about that now. But this is happening to so many families. But Larry, in Will County, you've had some success in the last year, at least, in terms of intervening, reducing that number of deaths by 34%, which is great. Still too many.
Too many.
What's working in Will County?
I think the first thing is that the forums that we have hosted over the last 2-3 years, getting right to the family. Hundreds of parents have come to the forums to hear people speak about it, and I guess really just recognizing that we have this problem, this epidemic that we classified it as, and willing to talk about it, you know, and it knows no boundaries. I mean, it can happen in the very wealthiest neighborhoods or the poorest neighborhoods. Basically telling parents, you need to talk to your children. Right. You need to talk to your grandchildren, and opening that up and getting publicity about that. I really think that has been a help. And we also got involved with Robert Crown and set up 2 programs in a middle school, Troy Middle School, and then or junior high, and then Joliet Township District 204 High School.
Right. So you're talking about it, and when you have teenagers, young, vulnerable kids who are going to experiment as part of their development, I guess, there is a boundary, though, between, say, this and anything else that they're experimenting with. How do you get that idea across that this drug is so insanely dangerous?
Kids today, I go to the high schools all the time. I've been in many in Will County, and I tell the kids that, you know, you're smart, you get it, but this particular drug is so powerful. It's different than a lot of other drugs. So I talk to the kids like it is. There are a lot of drugs out there, but there are some that you should never take. Heroin's at the top of my list, followed by crystal meth. But those 2 can kill you. They'll claim your life in a heartbeat. Either you will, like my son, you know, try it, and he wasn't an addict, but it took his life from him in the blink of an eye, or you'll spiral down into hell. The descent into heroin addiction, it will claim your life in the worst possible way, and that's what I tell kids, and they get it. So I think we're doing some good. We'd like to think that this trend will continue.
Quick thought on that?
Yeah, a quick thought was when we put out public service announcements when we first started, and the state's attorney, Jim Glasgow, and the coroner, Pat O'Neill, and myself, and we said, you only try heroin once. You're addicted after that.
You only get one choice out of it,
You get one choice.
Then it owns you.
You either don't do it, or you're going to be addicted to it.
All right, we're going to talk more about this when we come back with more of our discussion after a short break. Stay with us.